football. It's a beautiful game. A sport played by all different classes, races, genders, ages. It's the greatest sport to ever be played. A sport that has built an empire on passion and has amassed an audience unprecedented to any form of media, entertainment, or game ever. It is adored from every corner of the world, Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, except for one place. The fact of the matter is that football just isn't popular in the United States. The MLS, for example, is the 6th most watched league here in the United States, with the 4th most watched league getting 5 times the revenue of it. It's also widely considered as the 10th best footballing league in the world, just in terms of general quality and viewership. On average, the MLS rakes in about 2 million viewers per game, when leagues like the Premier League are raking in 7 million viewers per game. And before you say, don't compare the MLS and the Premier League, when you compare the two countries' populations, I think it's clear to see that the MLS just isn't popular here in the United States. But why is that? Why is such a sport-loving country like the United States so against the most popular sport in history? Let's find out. Here's football in America. American culture doesn't exactly gel with the sport of football either. I mean, the top 4 sports, American football, basketball, baseball, and hockey, all were made in the United States. Also, the top 4 leagues in the United States, which belong to those sports, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and the MLB, were all made before any footballing leagues were, such as the MLS and the NASL. The quality of football in the United States isn't exceptional either. The women's national team may be the best in the world, but the men's national team only ranks 7th in the world rating. You may think that is good, but many consider that rating undeserved, considering the fact that they got knocked out of the group stages in the 2014 World Cup, and in the 2018 World Cup, they didn't even qualify. The MLS isn't of the highest quality either, with most players being of the championship level, England's 2nd division. Most good MLS players end up being sent away to European giants like Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, etc., with players like Pulisic, Reina, McKennie all going to German clubs in the Bundesliga. More recently, players like Josh Sargent, who was bought by Norwich City from Werder Bremen, and Ricardo Pepi, who very recently went to Augsburg from FC Dallas, are just some of the name of MLS players going to the European giants and leaving the MLS with fairly mediocre players. You can't talk about football in the United States without talking about its history. The first attempt of creating a league in the United States was the NASL in 1968, and its aim was to bring in world-class players like Pelé, Beckenbauer, and even Pat Holland, who we got on an interview, to increase the popularity of the United States. But due to poor business decisions and bad management, the NASL was a complete failure. Football isn't also the most marketable sport in the United States. Sports in the United States tend to have a lot of ads per game. American football has ads every down, basketball has ads every quarter and timeout, and football doesn't really have that. You have 5 to 10 minute breaks every game during halftime, and that's it. Now, this is a problem in the United States because football just isn't lucrative to marketers. This isn't a problem in the Premier League because their main source of revenue is viewership, but the MLS doesn't get much of that anyways. But there's a more deeper rooted, lesser known issue at play here, which is more related to do with why younger athletes are choosing not to pursue football as a career and in turn are just less incentivized to play the sport altogether. You see, football in America actually has a very elite nature to it. In fact, it is one of the least grassroots sports in the country. On average, it costs about $6,000 a year to go to select academies where you can pursue a professional career, money that many families just cannot afford. This drastically plays into the popularity of football in the United States, with sports like American football and basketball having a relatively seamless route through high school and college, but To play college football or even to go to MLS academies, you will most likely have to go to these select academies, which do cost on average $6,000 a year. That decentivizes younger athletes to actually go out and pursue football as a career. Sports, when it comes to going professional, is so unforgiving all around the world. It just doesn't make sense for a young athlete to pursue it as a career. Pay so much money to go into something that's not a guarantee. Only around 1% of all college athletes actually go to the MLS, and only around 20 to 30% of those athletes actually play a full-fledged career in the MLS, or in the very rare opportunity that they get to go to Europe and start something bigger with their football careers. But don't just take it from me. Here are some professionals who either make up, are a part of, or completely direct how football is played, not only in the United States, but around the world. Let's see what their opinions are of the elite nature of football in the United States.
I do think that, unfortunately, I think there are a number of other sports that are going kind of similarly as soccer, where you do have to have money in order to participate at this high club level, so to speak. We have AAU sports programs here in the U.S. where basketball players and baseball players and other sports are now involved in these AAU systems, where coaches can't just go to games anymore. Well, they can, but they're more or less wasting their time, because through the AAU program and through the academy system in soccer, you can gather a whole bunch of really good players in one location. So the coach ends up going to that location to recruit from. Unfortunately, it does count out a number of players who just don't have the resources to be able to participate on those particular teams. It doesn't mean they're not qualified, but they may not have the resources to be able to pay to be a part of a club team that might cost you $5,000 or $6,000 over the course of a year.
Expensive nature, it is expensive. There's basically what we call a pay-to-play model, where people have to pay to play the sport. It's not like the rest of the world where most soccer is free. In Major League Soccer, all clubs in our league have their own youth academies. It's free to play in our academies. So the kids, the young players don't have to pay anything. But the clubs they come from, they're coming from situation where they're youth clubs. They do have to pay. So it's not great. We've got to get to a point where those academies maybe are not charging anything. But I think we're quite a ways away from that.
Growing up in Ghana, I never paid a dime playing soccer. I just played with my friends on the streets, and we joined teams, and we didn't have to pay anything to join the teams. We just played for fun. But when I came over to the United States, it was just crazy to me how much money parents pay to send their kids through this academy system. And sometimes it doesn't work out for these kids, and the monies that their parents spend is just gone to waste. So it's just ridiculous to me how much money people spend just trying to get their kids to play soccer.
As we know by now, football is the most equalizing sport in the world. Kids from every corner of every city of every country play this sport. Kids get the opportunity for their skills to pay the bills that they have been struggling to pay their entire lives. Academies bring in kids and harness the potential of the kids who have that potential to become professional. Cristiano Ronaldo was scouted at just age 12 to Sporting Lisbon, and went on to become the highest paid athlete of all time and become what is now considered the greatest of all time player. All it takes is one scout to realize a player's passion, their drive, their hard work for them to become the next Cristiano Ronaldo. But it doesn't work like that in the United States. Speaking of scouts, we managed to talk to one of the most prestigious scouts out there. One who played for West Ham and won the FA Cup there, and one who's managed both the Arsenal and Tottenham under-18 teams. I'm of course talking about Pat Holland. And we asked Pat Holland to explain to you, the audience, how European academies work and how they make the sport of football equalizing. I just wanted to ask you about how European clubs run and how academies run. What do they do, and how do they employ players?
Well, it's changed dramatically from when I was a young person. I went to West Ham when I was 15 years of age. And you went there in those days as an apprentice. And then the next progression from there was to get a professional contract. And you did that basically by doing well in the youth team and then getting into they had an A side, a Met side. So it was like a third team. And then you went into the reserves. The reserves in those days was mainly senior players. So there'd be 8 senior players, maybe 9, and maybe 2 young apprentices who were gradually getting into the game. And then after that, you would be into the first team if you were fortunate and it went well. What they've done now, the whole thing's changed completely. They've got academies. They're taking young players in at the age of 7 and 8 and coaching the boys at that age. So you could be at a club when you eventually sign at 16 as an academy player. You could be in that system for 8 years. Which is quite a long time. That's a lot of coaching and you know, a lot of information to take in. I personally don't agree with it, but that's the way the system is at the moment. And then from there, the process would be exactly the same. There'd be the youth team, and then they've got an under-23 league now, and then the next progression would be the first team. So the jumps aren't as many. I think the under-23 league is basically an under-19 league. There's no senior players in it. Very rarely does a senior player go into that environment. So the young players are not getting the benefit of working with senior players at an early age.
In these modern day academies, do they allow people who come from poorer backgrounds to come to the academy?
Absolutely. I mean, it's 95% made up of kids from what I call council estates, which I come off of. And that's been the way it's been forever in England and in Scotland, and I think in Wales and in Ireland. You know, it's a working class game.
Some bring up the idea that MLS clubs and colleges should both bring up opportunities for kids. They bring this up because both are vital here in the United States. But should they be doing more? Here we have some experts and what they say. And I wanted to ask you, since you're in the ins and outs of DC United, how is DC United helping stimulate the growth of the sport in the area and in the country?
Sure. Well, in our particular case, we've been very successful. We've won the most overall championships in the history of the league when you factor in MLS Cup, Supporters Shield, US Open Cup, international competition. So I think our success has created a real buzz in our market. A lot of people know our brand, our name. They enjoy coming to the stadium. We opened up a brand new stadium in 2018, and we brought Wayne Rooney here. He played here for 2 years. So bringing a global icon like Wayne Rooney, who played for England and Manchester United and Everton, into our city and our club, created a lot of interest in our club. So those are a few examples. But I think to answer your question, we also have a youth academy where we're seeing our academy develop young talents that move into the first team. I think that process, again, going back to our league being a young league, 25 years old, I think it's still a matter of time, right? When we're 50 years old, our league, hopefully we've created many young talents that have come through, right? And that creates, right, the snowball effect of gaining popularity in our market.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, and obviously, big names like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Gonzalo Higuain now at Inter Miami, players like that. And David Beckham, obviously, the biggest one early on at LA Galaxy. Those type of names, they bring attention to the MLS, but also you're having your people like Alphonso Davies, not an American, but came from an American club. Players like Gio Reyna, Weston McKennie, players like that. And yeah, I agree with you. Inspiration has a lot to do with it, and obviously it's
and actually, you bring up a very good point, and I think that's part of this process and part of the answer to your question as well. Is when a player will come from, say, a youth local club, he plays for DC United and does well, and then goes to Europe and does well in Europe, and maybe plays for our U.S. national team, right? That's a success story.
Yeah.
And those success stories generate more interest in your team and in the game of soccer. So again, it's part of the evolution of soccer in this country. We're still a young sport. We still have a lot of work to do. But I think that process, that cycle, right, of youth player to pro club to Europe, maybe playing for a big club in Germany, like Christian Pulisic, go to play in Chelsea, right? And that just has a snowball effect on the game and the popularity.
Do you feel like colleges have the responsibility to stimulate growth and kind of help out with lower based income families and players who want to pursue it as a career and want to become footballers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know that colleges necessarily have the responsibility to grow the sport of soccer, but I do think that colleges have a responsibility to introduce young people to different types of programs and different sporting opportunities. So I do think that for example, we're here in Wellesley. Wellesley is a little bit of a different community than, say, Cambridge or Brookline or Somerville. But we do have a number of youth here who have never been exposed to soccer or baseball or basketball. So we try and do that stuff across the summertime. We try and introduce them to camps and clinics and things where they can get a sense of what the sport is like. My hope is that, my colleagues at other institutions in those other areas of Boston and across the country are doing the same thing for other athletes that might not have an opportunity to get introduced to soccer. Soccer is it's all you need is a ball and a field, right? There's not a heck of a lot that has to happen in order to introduce somebody to that sport. It's got to be, while it's not the most popular sport in America now, I think it is growing. Just my own personal response to that, to the show Ted Lasso. It's not totally unrelated. I mean, I have a number of friends now who track European football. They watch the Premier League. They have teams that are involved. The Red Sox purchase of Liverpool. A number of these franchises are now owned by American businessmen, and they're becoming introduced to the U.S. through summer whenever they come here and play each other in friendly matches. Those are the types of things I think that are stimulating interest, and it's starting to change. But to your point, it hasn't changed at the youth level. There are, I would imagine, hundreds of thousands of young boys and girls who would want to play soccer and probably do so at the town level. But in order to be able to become a really good player, the only way to do that is really through the academy system now, and through the process of paying a lot of money and getting yourself involved in one of these club teams.
Obviously, in any country, you'll have organizations that try to do good with the sport, and the United States is no different. One of these organizations is called Soccer Without Borders, and what they strive to do is try and increase the popularity in the United States by starting out with the youths who don't have as much to give as the ones who come from richer backgrounds. But what is their aim? And how do they go about achieving it? How do you go about equalizing the sport for everyone who is here in the United States who can't afford to, play at that club level?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, our organization is focused more on the social aspect. So, while elite academies are focused on getting the best players, obviously it requires a lot of money to even invest in those players. We probably take the kids with less resources, less opportunity, and just take them as far as we can. We have teams we had a U2L program, so from first to like sixth grade. And that's just kind of basic program, teaching kids like how to socialize, be outside, learn the very basics of the game, really just keep everything fun. We have a middle school age group and a high school age group where, again, social aspects are the first things that we focus on. As they get older, you start to step up the intensity of playing. So we have them in leagues. If we can't get them into like outside leagues. We'll have in-house leagues depending on the amount of players, just to keep them learning the game while also interacting with people and giving them just opportunities to get better in whatever they may need. For all of our programs, we provide equipment, field time, uniforms, transportation to and from games. We rely a lot on volunteers. I mentioned donations and grants. It's all like kids don't have to pay for anything as a part of our program. And the goal of that is just to give them that foot in the door in terms of playing the sport they love while also growing as people. And then obviously playing with us and us taking them around to games in different leagues, they'll get exposure. And if kids show a lot of talent, we can maybe hand them off to a more experienced. Our main goal is to just give them that access that a lot of them don't have, trying to break down the barriers that might keep them from otherwise progressing.
Of course, we had a final question for everybody. Is there really a solution to this problem? Is it feasible? How long would it take? These are people that come from every single part of the game, whether in the US or here, a player or a coach. And I wanted to ask them from all their perspectives, is there really a solution on how to increase popularity of football in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity. We mentioned it earlier, kind of exposing students to soccer at a young age, and trying to get more people playing the game, which is going to exponentially increase the potential of growth in the sport. That's one way that we can do it. I think another thing that we could do within the U.S. is having, particularly in the inner city, having programs that allow students to develop, whether it's in the springtime or playing indoors in the wintertime, any of those types of things. If we could launch more of those programs, and I do think there's more available. It's just there's not a lot of funding for those programs right now. What we need is funding in order to be able to grow those programs so that more and more students get noticed. The other thing, which I've advocated for a long time, but I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, because it's more economical the way that it's currently running for the recruiter to be able to go to one location and see hundreds of students participating. So in the club system, that really works for a recruiter because you're not going to different schools in different parts of the country. But I would love to see some kind of transition back to where I, as a soccer coach, can go to Reading High School and see a really good player and recruit from those individual circumstances, rather than traveling to Las Vegas and seeing 600 kids who have each paid $5,000 a piece to be a part of that program. Some of those programs I do see as a money grab. I see there are a lot of people out there trying to make money. It's turned into a really big business. I mean, the idea of club sports is a really lucrative business. It's $1 billion business in America right now. All of our parents of students believe that the best way to get their child an opportunity in college is through an athletic scholarship. And I think that while some of those folks probably are correct, many more of them, I think, get lured into the idea that in order to be able to play competitively, you have to pay this money, you have to be a part of one of these programs in order to get there. So I do think there's a money grab aspect to it, which I really don't like, but I'm also trying to figure out ways to change that. For example, the Cronkies or maybe even the owner of the Red Sox. I mean, if people like that could put together more grassroots programs that would introduce more people and perhaps bring good, high quality coaches in as well, that's going to be really important too. And that would help to spread some word of mouth.
I think a lot of the clubs, they need to have a charitable arm to their business. And I think they need to create soccer festivals for, kids, for example, who've never played the sport. Come here for 3 hours on a Saturday. We're going to introduce you to the sport. We'll give you a soccer ball. We'll maybe give you a t-shirt. and you can have fun as a young player. Just come with no pressure. It's free of charge, and have a great afternoon, right? I think things like that. I think those youth clubs may be going out into the community and doing more outreach. Again, having a charitable arm to their soccer business, where they want to do the right things and create opportunities for young talents, in the community, that are part of the community, who don't maybe have the money to play, or maybe shy about approaching the club to try to play club soccer as a 5, 6, 7-year-old because they can't afford it, right? So doing more outreach into those communities to create programming, scholarship opportunities, right, to attract more of these young talents into their club.
For me, like I said, growing up in Ghana, there are like a few academies back in Ghana that recruit underprivileged kids who are like really good at soccer or who have the potential to become great at soccer. They recruit them to these academies for free, and they basically train them, prepare them, and get them ready for like whatever they want to do, whether go to college and play or go professionally. So I think like other countries need more academies like that, like non-profit organizations like that, to like help kids who like grew up in poor families who don't have the income to pay to play soccer.
I think there just needs to be more access, more investment at the most basic levels, things like soccer fields, or even if it's 5-a-side pitches, just spaces to play. That's a big barrier. I know for us as an organization, especially in the wintertime when it gets colder in the Northeast and where we are, it's difficult to have places to take the kids to play. Like gym spaces are limited. You're competing against basketball or other sports that require gyms, volleyball. So really, I would say it starts off with access at the most basic level. Investing in communities. Apart from fields and stuff, you can invest in, I guess, subsidizing programs similar to mine, or youth teams in the area, travel teams, as opposed to having kids have to go out and find a club to play for. If you could have a local city team that's free or lower costs, or maybe something where you could, have a voucher for kind of like an after school program, things of that nature.
And they're all right. For me, the solution is a mix of all of these. It takes a collective effort to raise the popularity of football in the United States. Corporate sponsors, MLS teams, festivals, they all help bring in young and talented players into the game. And maybe that's not only how we raise popularity here in the United States, but it's how we change our outlook on sport forever. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.